Hey everybody, it's Josh Runquist here for Heavy Debriefings, and it's time to talk about the top 10 albums. You have no idea how long I've been waiting to do that. But seriously, thank you so much for checking out this video, and if you've been keeping up with the series, you may notice this video looks a little bit different. You may have seen it look this way over the last couple videos I've done so far for interviews, but I have a new lighting situation here. I have a new LED light ring over here. I have my normal light up here, although it's a little hard to be able to tell from that. No lighting over here. It's kind of like a shadow thing that I got going on right now. I wanted to try this out, mainly because I want the settings of my webcam to look the best that they possibly can, which is almost where it's at right now. Almost perfect. It's a little darker, which I understand. It might be for some people, might not. But I really like the way it looks. I want to try this out. And if it becomes to be too dark, I will add a second ring light over here so it's equal. Otherwise, I think I like the look. Why don't you tell me down below what you think of it? And now with all that said and done, let's get into it. Let's get into the new millennium, which is now 23 years into that millennium. My top 10 albums. Okay, I'll promise I'll stop. Coming in at number 10 is Hammerfall with Renegade. And this is the Hammerfall album that started it all for me. This was the very first one that I checked out, and I wouldn't even say it's the best Hammerfall album, but it is one that is very near and dear to my heart. It is one of the first power metal albums that I ever checked out, and it's part of why I love cheesy power metal so much. And Hammerfall is so perfect at that. I love the music, I love the vocals, the production style, the songwriting, everything that they do. But it is layered in such a thick layer of cheese that it will turn off some people. In fact, it might turn off a lot of people, but not me. I love everything that goes on with it. And that's the thing with power metal. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be cheesy. It's supposed to be all of these different things, and Hammerfall just does it in such a perfect way. And to me, at least anyways, they started really nailing it from 2000 onwards. Yes, the previous albums that they have are fantastic albums. And for those that may not have known, Michael Stane of Dark Tranquillity may have been the singer of Hammerfall, if he decided not to go off into his own ventures with In Flames and Dark Tranquillity. Think of that world that could have happened. But yeah, Renegade, I think, is an album that is absolutely worth checking out. It is that last foray into 90s power metal before we started getting into the 2000s power metal, and it's worth checking out, I guarantee it. At number 9, it's Children of Bodom with Follow the Reaper. And this is the first album that really has those power metal tendencies. The first two were much more symphonic, with its melodic death metal side, but this time they decided to go full force into the power metal style, and I love it for that. The songs are so heavy on this album, and it's got that great balance of what I love about the band. The melodic death metal side, the power metal side, all combined in perfect harmony. Of course, as years will go by, one style will start to take over more than the other, and if you know the band, you already know what that is. But with Children of Bodom, this was the album that I feel like was the perfect in all tinges when it comes to that. And I will say the previous two albums were so close to making my top 10 in their respective years, but unfortunately they did not make the cut. This album, however, had to be a part of it, and I'm so glad this one at least made it in. Follow the Reaper might be their best album in retrospect. I mean, there's arguments for the albums after, well, some of the albums after, and there's very much arguments for the albums before it. But again, I feel like this is the perfect symbolic balance. And if you don't believe me, check it out for yourself. Number 8 is Crimson by Sentenced. And much like when I talked about with Frozen, and of course when I talk about their final two albums, this is just the era of Sentenced I love more than almost any other Finnish band. The older I get, the more that I appreciate Sentenced and everything that they're able to accomplish. Even their death metal days I love so much, but their gothic metal days are just perfection to me, and Crimson was almost that last underground album before their next album, which I guarantee will be on this list. And it just has that great rock element to it, has that great metal feel behind it, great gothic overtones, of course. Vile's vocals just getting stronger and more passionate with every album that goes by, with just the hintest bits of sarcasm that'll be sure to come. It's really hard for me to say anything more than this. It's just a fantastic gothic metal album, and if you've never checked out Sentence, you are really missing out. At number 7, we got Godspeed You Black Emperor with their magnum opus, Lift Your Skinny Fists Like Antennas to Heaven. This is possibly the most crucial post-rock album to ever be made. There are ones that are bigger, there are those that are better, there are those that are grander, there are those that are more acceptable. But to me, this Godspeed album is everything that I love about post-rock, and everything that a lot of people will not like. And I understand why, but let me make my case. For Godspeed, this particular double album is 4 songs, 2 songs on each disc, and every song has their own little bit of flavoring to it. A lot of the songs, well, let's face it, all 4 of them, start off slow and then they become grand. And that's what I love about it. I love that cinematic feel behind it. It feels like you're watching a movie and every song is a slow burn. I love slow burn movies so much, and that is post-rock in a nutshell. It's a slow burn, but it's worth it. And then you have a song like Static, which has a movement called World Police, which I can only imagine, especially at the time that this was coming out, was, well, you can figure it out for yourself. But that particular song, I feel, might be the scariest moment in rock and metal music. And I don't say that lightly. This is someone who listens to so much extreme metal, who listens to so much black, death, gore grind, satanic music, or if you want to shift it, Christian music as well too. Look, all music has good music somewhere in it. I've yet to feel the fear and tension in any other song, in any other movement, in any other style, than with the segment of World Police. And I highly recommend that if you have the time, at least check out the song Static. I understand it's very long, it's over 20 minutes, I get that, but just give it a chance and just don't look up when that particular moment comes. You'll feel it, and then it just gets scarier and scarier and scarier. It gets more tension, more tension, more tension, and then it just explodes all over. No phrasing. And it's just one of the greatest movements that I've ever heard in music. I can't stress it enough. And the other 3 songs are fantastic in their own ways as well. But I wanted to highlight that part because that is one of the greatest movements in an entire genre, if not the greatest moment. And all I can do is just say check it out and check out this album. If you have the time to check out a double disc concept album of just 4 songs, with each song being over 20 minutes, yeah, go check this one out. Coming in at number 6 is Porcupine Tree with Lightbulb Sun. And like I mentioned before, Stupid Dream by Porcupine Tree is the first Porcupine Tree album that I really started to appreciate everything that they were trying to do. And Lightbulb Sun is a bit of a continuation of that sound. It might be a little darker, it might be a little proggier, but it is pretty much in the same way of Stupid Dream. I will also say on this album, there are some of the best written pop songs that you will ever hear in your life. And that is no exaggeration. Yes, Steven Wilson and company, really before the band took off here, like this was the last album before the metal started to come into play. And there's something a little bit innocent about this album for that reason. I mean, before they started getting into the metal tendencies, but I really appreciate it for that reason as well. Like, I love the Porcupine Tree metal era, and you'll see that coming up in the future. But this album is, to me, better than Stupid Dream. It combines all of the elements that I loved about Porcupine Tree before they got metal. And it's just that great poppy, proggy tinge that not enough bands ever try to go for. Maybe because it was perfected by Porcupine Tree, I don't know. But I'd like to see more bands try to do this particular era. And yeah, again, before they started really laying in the distortion and becoming more metal, which you'll hear in Ipsagia, check out Lightbulb Sun. It's a little more innocent, but it's an album that's absolutely worth checking out. Coming in at number 5, we got Nightingale with I. And if you know the backstory, at least the first 4 albums of Nightingale, you know it's all a part of the Breathing Shadows saga. And I is a prequel to the previous 2 albums. And it really has, like, a great sound to it. Like, it's probably the best sounding one of the first 3, even 4 albums. And this is the one that I feel like the band really started to become who they wanted to be on this album. Dan Swano started incorporating more than just himself, of course with the previous album, but he introduced his brother Dag more on this album. The songs feel more structured. They have that great gothic tendencies to it. There's a lot of great poppy moments going on here. Lonely is one of the greatest acoustic songs ever made, and it was right before the band started to really embrace the prog era. And you can still hear the prog going on here, that's why I still have it in the For Fans Of section, but it's much more in the gothic rock era still. But that gothic era starting in 2003 onwards, it's just perfection. But I do love the gothic era of Nightingale, and of course that continues on through the entire course of the band. But when they were just more focused on goth, that was a great era, and this is the last of that. And if you want to understand more of the Breathing Shadow series, I recommend starting with I and then going backwards and checking everything out. It's a fantastic story, and of course, vampires. But yeah, a fantastic story that I think needs to be checked out. And of course, check out Dan Swano. He's one of the greatest musicians and behind the scenes guys in music. And coming in at number 4, we have the mad scientist himself, Heavy Devy Devin Townsend with Physicist. And this is an underrated album. I really think so, even by Devin standards. Even by Devin himself, because I know he doesn't appreciate the album as much because of the production value, which I do understand. But he did take the song Kingdom and turn it into one of his biggest songs on the album, Up a Cloud. And trust me, we'll get there in time. But with Physicist, if you don't understand, it's Devin Townsend and the strapping young lad era at that time playing on this album. And it sounds like Strapping Young Lad, but it is sent through a pop filter. The songs are very poppy, very catchy. I've seen someone describe this as Strapping Young Lad with Spice Girls lyrics, and that's probably the best way to be able to describe it. Now again, the production value is very much, let's just say, of its time, and either you can't listen to it, or you'll be able to love and appreciate it. There's really no in between. For me, I'm able to love and appreciate this album, that's why it's so high up on this particular part of the list. Every song on here is worth checking out. I'm amazed that the opener Namaste wasn't re-recorded. I feel like Devin could have done something magnificent with that. I mean, considering that what he did with Kingdom, he could have done with that. He could have done that with Namaste, at least in my humblest of humble opinions. But yeah, this is a classic Devin Townsend album that is ranked low for a lot of people, but should be ranked much, much higher. And while I would never say this is his best album because, you know, who's to say what Devin's best album really is? This is an album that should not go unnoticed. At least check it out and see if it's for you. Coming in at number 3 is In Flames with what I consider to be their best album, Clayman. And it's so strange to think about how people feel like this is the last good album of the band. And to some people, Colony is the last good album of the band, which confuses me even more. This is that perfect culmination of melodic death metal, a little bit of metalcore thrown in there, a little bit electronic feeling behind it, and a lot of great pure heavy metal riffs thrown in all together in this magnificent blend that I feel represents In Flames in the best style possible. I don't feel like any other album, including Colony, shows off In Flames the best as it does here. It has shorter songs, it's poppier in the right moments, huge choruses, gigantic hooks, some of the best playing they've ever done. I mean, the title track to Clayman is one of their best songs. And even a B-side that didn't even make the original album, Strong and Smart, I think is my favorite In Flames song, period. But no, there's a lot of great classic metal riffs on here, melodic death metal riffs, a little bit of metalcore riffs. It's got a little bit of everything. And I can understand if you don't like any clean vocals whatsoever, you probably don't enjoy Clayman, but you gotta at least make it to this point before they reroute to Remain. Wink wink, nudge nudge. Seriously, Clayman, I feel, is their best album. I see there's a lot of discourse towards that, but I think you're wrong. This is their best album, and, you know, give it a shot. See if you feel the same way. Coming in at number 2 is Pain of Salvation with The Perfect Element Part 1. One of the most important progressive metal albums of the 21st century, in my humblest of humble opinions. Now, the whole concept of this is spanned between this album and other albums in the Pain of Salvation discography. It's a little hard to wrap your mind around. I mean, if you really dive in, you'll start to understand everything about it, but trying to explain it to you, you're just gonna have the dumbest look on your face as I try to describe it, because I know I had that face, and that's what Wikipedia is for. That's what Daniel Gillenlow is for. They can explain it better. But I'm here to talk about the music, and some of the best progressive metal songs are on this album. Ashes is arguably their biggest song that they've ever had, and for good reason. It's a nice, great, heavy song that sounds like nothing else at the time. The melodies of Morning on Earth and Reconciliation, the melodies that start off both of those songs, might be my favorite melody ever written in all of music, in all of time. That one just hits me harder than anything else. Just right in here, feels so good. The production is a bit raw, although very clear. Daniel Gillenlow be able to show off his entire voice there. Through his whole range, it gets so low, it gets so high in the falsettos. It's got everything in between. It is a, no pun intended, perfect album from the band. And I really should do a backwards marathon on these guys, and that will happen in time. But it is the kind of album where, if you don't like over-the-top, self-indulgent progressive metal, you're not going to enjoy this. You might enjoy elements of it, again, no pun intended, but I don't think you'll be able to enjoy the gravitas of it. If you can't, just let your inhibitions go and enjoy prog proper. And for a lot of people, they can't do that, and I totally understand why. I have my falling outs with prog, especially lately, but I love the stuff that I grew up on. I love the stuff that I love. And The Perfect Element Part 1 is a perfect example of that. It is a concept album that is not complete, but if you can appreciate the music for what it is one of my favorite albums of all time. And I've realized that, especially over the last few years. Like, I had another album that I feel was higher than this, but I think this might actually beat it now that time has been given. Yeah. If you want a prog metal band that you don't hear that much about unless you're in the prog circles, seriously, Pain of Salvation and The Perfect Element Part 1, I think is a fantastic way to start off your journey with the band. And coming in at number 1 is one of my absolute favorite albums of all time, Nevermore's Dead Heart in a Dead World. Now, I've mentioned Nevermore in the past in this series, and of course with the 6-string era of the band, they have written some of their darkest material at the time, but boy did 2000's Dead Heart in a Dead World change not only the band, because they became 7th string at this point, not only did it change the band because this is easily the most successful Nevermore album to date and the most highly acclaimed, but it also changed the landscape of metal at the time. Warl Dane shows off his vocals in a way that is perfection on this album. Jeff Loomis does some of the best guitar solos ever made on this album. All the songs are super dark, super heavy, and whether they get slow, whether they get very melodic, whether they get speedy, it doesn't matter. Every song on this album matters in a way that no other album was really able to accomplish, at least for me, in this particular style before. This was the first album that really got dark metal right. And of course, that wasn't even what they were going for. They were just writing the music that they wanted to make. It was still very proggy and still very power metal influenced, but it was super dark influenced. And this is the album where the culmination of all that came together in perfect harmony. There's so many great songs off this album. Every single song on here is worth checking out, but if you could only check out 2, let's say, it's the song Believe in Nothing, which is one of the greatest metal ballads ever made, and the title track, which is arguably the greatest title track in metal? Oh, that would be a fun idea to do at some point. What is the best title track ever made? But I think Nevermore might have the clincher here. Yeah, this started off 2000s metal in the right way. And for some people, it went in the wrong direction. For others, like myself, like I said, it just led metal into a brand new era, a brand new millennium. And it is one of the greatest metal albums of all time. Seriously. If you've never checked out Nevermore, if you've never checked out Dead Heart in a Dead World for some reason, easily, you have to check this out. Stop holding out. You're missing on some of the greatest music ever made. And there we go, folks, my top 10 albums, no, I'm not going to do it this time, of the year 2000. And thank you so much for sticking around and checking out this whole list. It means a lot to me. I hope you're enjoying the new lighting setup. Things are going to be changing behind me, of course, as well. There's a lot going on right now. I'm still in the midst of everything, and It's hard to believe I haven't even hit the halfway point of this series yet, and it's gonna be fun because starting in 2004 is when, no, 2003 into 2004 is when I discovering music for myself, and I'll explain that when we get to that list in just a few weeks. But if you agree with my list, if you don't agree, or if you just want to tell me how wrong I am from my own humble opinion, let me know in the comments down below, and be sure to list your favorite albums of the year 2000. And until my next top 10 list, backwards marathon, interview, review, or any other kind of video I put up here on the Heavy Debriefings YouTube channel, for Heavy Debriefings, this is Josh Runquist saying, see ya.